be, I guess.
All right, I'm good.
Did you ride the train often? But if you didn't, when did you ride it?
Well, I'm trying to think if I ever rode it. I don't, in all honesty, I don't think I actually rode it. I remember when the train, and there were 4 coal companies up there that supplied, delivered coal for the 4 coal companies, but I don't think I ever rode the, it was mostly, that line was mostly freight, but there was 1 passenger car. I think they made a trip from John.
Yeah. Well, on Sunday, they would have a special. They would ride to go over to Hartford. And a lot of people got on it for the races. They would have harness races, sulky races, you know what I mean by that? Not horse races, but sitting on the back. They had a cart, and they rode behind it. And sulky races, that's the right word,
Yeah.
sulky. And a lot of people around Rhinebeck had horses and raced in races. Before Saratoga was popular, they were racing in Hartford. And they would load up on the train, and I went once out with them, when I was 7 or 8 years old, out to Hartford to see the races. It took quite a trip out there. It was a very interesting trip, because it moved kind of slow, but it was really an express, but it was still awful slow. And like I said, there's 1 train, or 2 trains at the beginning, up to 1929, when they had the recession. Then 1 train traveled every day, one way and the other way. And they sometimes would have 2 cars for people, and sometimes 1. Like the express going to Hartford was 2 cars. So that's the only time I was really riding it. I have a picture which I'll pass around of my wife on the. This was at Hog Bridge when she was 3 years old. And that's her father with her. This is 1928.
1928.
And that was a...
Did you have a favorite experience from being on the railroad?
Well, the main thing that is in my memory is the freight station at Hog Bridge where we picked up feed and stuff because we had cattle. There was a lot of cattle farms around here then. And because we supplied a lot of food to New York City, they would ship hay and stuff down. Now, I don't know, do you know if the Huckleberry transferred over on New York Central or the Huckleberry took it right to New York? I don't know that.
I would assume they transferred it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, why would they? Because they put it on the Huckleberry at Hog Bridge. But they collected
Or
it.
maybe shipped cars?
Yeah. They would collect from Pine Plains, Ankrum, Copake. They went through all those areas. Mount Ross was a big center, and they would ship farm products down to New York City. But we were the main source of food in those days because they didn't get it from out west. The grain, the meat, apples and potatoes, slate from Slate Quarry for making roofs, went down on it. And but the main reason of the whole train was the coal. The coal came over from Pennsylvania on the Delaware Canal, ended up in the Roundup River on barge, came across the Slate Dock, and that's where they loaded it. Slate Dock's over by Wrangler. That's where they loaded the coal cars. And we had 4 coal stations, you're more familiar with those. And we had Raft Grinders and Lounge.
Yeah, we had the four distinct coal companies, which that's what stands out mostly in my mind, because my uncle owned one of them, and it was quite a story. His father had a coal yard, and he had feed and hardware and so on. It was just before the bridge on the right-hand side, the new bridge they rebuilt at Hog Bridge there. And the last building on the right, my uncle's father, Whitfield Reinders, and he had an operation there. Well, he and my uncle, Clarence was his name, but everybody knew him as Rats Reinders. He was kind of a character, and he and his father had a falling out, and he went right across the street, and went in competition with his father. He built a big high coal pocket there, and he had his office there and scales to weigh the coal. And now his office is still there. He converted it into a house. In that last building before the stream on the left-hand side, that was his office. And in later years, he saw the handwriting on the wall with the coal going out. He set up bulk, he went into fuel oil and set up bulk tanks up at Berrytown Dock. And my uncle had a lot of ingenuity, and a lot of drive, and then eventually he phased out the coal, which the rest of them did likewise after the railroad stopped. My uncle was still into coal for a while, and they'd haul it, have it trucked in after the railroad went out.
One of the big things that they shipped out of Rhinebeck was flowers. We were the violet capital of the world. Every farm had a little greenhouse, and they would pack their little violets up like in corsages and ship it to New York, and that went on, a lot of it went on the Huckleberry. And we shipped flowers too. I mean, there was a lot of flowers. There was many, many growers. And up in Red Hook, they had the chocolate factory. You know, everybody knows where the chocolate factory is up there? By the Agway? There's a big building. It's called the chocolate factory now. And it was a real chocolate factory. And they put out tons and tons of chocolate.
In Firehouse Lane there?
And they shipped it all to New York on the Huckleberry. And the freight station is where the Agway is now. And Borden had a milk plant up there. They made cheese and processed milk, and they shipped on the Huckleberry. In fact, Red Hook had what? They had a tin factory. They had the Borden soap, and they had a soap factory. That was in the latter years when they had the Rory soap factory. But all that was dependent on the Huckleberry before trucks were around. So, any other things?
Well, milk and all went by.
Yeah, milk all went on the train. Maybe I'm answering some of your questions already, but if you got any more there? What else?
How far was the station from your homes?
How far was from our home? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
We were about 4 miles from the station. We were out in the country.
John still has the farm out there, Lobotsky's. It's on White Schoolhouse Road. In their original farm, he's still.
Even on that little road, there was like 4 dairy farmers. Everybody had 12 to 20 cows, and they had to do something with all the milk, and that's a lot of it went on that Huckleberry to New York. They had refrigeration of ice. They used to collect ice. That was the refrigeration out of the Hudson. And they used to pack the milk in chunks of ice. That was quite a business too. A lot of those businesses are gone, those old type things.
Yeah, down on Crystal Lake, I don't know if you ever heard, they had an ice house, and they harvested ice in the winter, and they pack it. It would keep all summer. They'd pack it in sawdust.
Yeah. They had some lakes, I don't know which one it went around Mount Ross and up to that way, where they harvested a lot of ice. But they shipped it, packed it sawdust, so after all year, packed it the same. And that was our refrigeration.
I live about like 2 miles, I think, from White Schoolhouse Road. So maybe, like I've never actually been down the road. But
What
like,
road do you live on?
Ann Drive.
Yeah.
Oh, Ann Drive?
Yeah.
Out by Sebasco Village.
Yeah, by Sebasco,
yeah.
Yeah, that was all farm, that was a big street farm where you are. Bill Cookenham had a big farm there and raised street farm. But all those fields, some of them are still empty, but where all the houses are.
Yep, there's still that big field over on the side.
On the other side of it was the Vogel farm with the cattle. It was Weaver before Vogel. And he had a big cattle farm up there.
And Mr. Sipperley, how far did you live from where the railroad was?
Well, we
were a town boy.
I'm a city boy. Well, Peter still lives in the house that we grew up in. You know where Peter lives, next door where we had the plumbing shop.
But I'm not sure the students know. I mean,
Well, on
that's why
South Street, you know where the Brogan Center is? That's where we went to high school. That was the former high school. And my brother and I were raised where my brother still lives, right diagonally across, 38 South Street. It's a house right next to where we had the plumbing shop building is still there. And that's right next to it. So we didn't have far to go to school. And the grade, I was in the 3rd grade when the grade school burned, and that was in '39. And then we were in temporary buildings for 12, 13 years, so they built over here at the high school.
So other questions that you have?
Yeah. Did you meet anybody through the experience of the railroad while it was up?
Meet anyone?
Yeah, like, did you learn about anybody or meet anybody interesting?
No, not really, not on the old CNE line, but probably I did a little bit more with the New York Central. I remember my father taking me down when the King and Queen of England were here visiting the Roosevelts when Franklin D. was president, and there was a get-together down the High Park Station to see them off when they were leaving to go back to the King and Queen of England were over visiting the Roosevelts.
When Roosevelt dedicated our post office, my sister was a flower girl. And
Oh, was
dedicated
she?
flowers
Yeah.
to Mr. Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Roosevelt.
Yeah, FDR was, President Roosevelt was instrumental in building, seeing that our post office was built, and the one in Hyde Park and the one in Poughkeepsie, and they're all built of stone.
Same
And,
type of stone he was in all.
yeah, so, and he was here for the dedication of ours, and that was in '39.
The Huckleberry was called Huckleberry because when it went through the Berkshires, it would go so slow that the passengers could hop off, pick the huckleberries, get a quart, and then hop back on the train, and it kept going. That's how they called it the Huckleberry. That's the actual fact. That's what it was named. Yeah. It was called the R&C Railroad. It was called the Rhinebeck Connecticut Railroad. Did you know that?
I thought it was CNE, Central New England.
Well, that they joined into this. That was sold to us.
Oh, okay, well, you know more, a little more of the history
It
of
was
it.
sold to him in latter years. The fellow that started it, I forget his name. Remember who started the Huckleberry?
No, not really.
I saw it in the history, and I forget. But anyhow, he pulled a pretty good deal. He sold it to those people at a big profit. And while he was going out of business, it was getting bad. Yeah. And all the tracks got picked up right after 1938. That was so fast, all the rails went, they all went to Japan. And then Japan was getting ready to go to war with us, so we didn't know that. And a lot of that, most of it went into armament and tanks
so
and boats and stuff.
They said they fired it back at us, you know, in the Second World War.
We got it all back.
We shipped all the steel from the rails over there before the war.
What do you got, Sal? You got a question?
Do you ever send flowers?
What's that?
Did you ever send flowers on Huckleberry?
Did you ever send flowers
Oh, yeah.
on the Huckleberry?
Yeah, we grew a lot of flowers. We grew fields of delphiniums, asters, gladiolas. My father always raised a lot of weird things. That was one of them. And we shipped it down, I can still remember, to West 38th Street, William L. Doyle Company. We shipped flowers down there, and they grew beautiful in those old days. There wasn't any bugs around. You didn't have to spray like today. And they put a fair price. These were Depression years during the 30s. And anything you got, you know, you were happy to get it. Yeah.
How come they decided to take the Huckleberry line down?
Yeah, that was my
Well,
next question.
it ended really when the truck started. They started trucking all the coal, and the coal was really our mainstay. And as the truck business started building up more and more, they got less and less business because they couldn't make a living on just the freight from here, farmers. And they needed that coal business. And that was sort of the end of it.
Well, same with milk.
Yeah,
The truck milk tankers came on, and that was a big thing in this area. We had three that at one time that I remember in the latter 30s, maybe 3 different milk transport companies out of Rhinebeck.
Didn't we have Borden's here too? We had Borden's and Red Hook. I don't know if we had.
Maybe in Red Hook. I
They
don't think
processed cheese or something.
we had M.L. Harris, Jerome,
yeah.
and C&E.
C&E, yeah.
Three milk tanker outfits. with their headquarters here in Rhinebeck,
That took the business away from the trains.
from the trains.
But on a train, I can remember them loading hay, which really amazed me, for the horses. Because horse was the main thing in New York City. They had a horse and wagon and a sawpiece and a driver. And we harvested the hay around here, and we had to tie it up with the metal binders that we had to make them tight and shipped to New York.
This is getting away from the old hookah bush, but just to go a little further with the truck traffic on Route 9, through the 30s there and so on, when I can remember well, the old Rhinebeck Diner, which was on the south side of the bank,
Right.
and that was a going place.
Oh, boy,
And
yeah.
before the thruway was built, went through, you can imagine the truck traffic on Route 9.
Biggest diner in New York State.
Yeah, and the trucks would be lined up down on Mill Street there, the drivers into the diner for coffee and food, and back through those years, we had quite a number of accidents down on the
Oh, yeah.
Cemetery Hill turn there,
Yeah.
especially at night. The drivers maybe fall asleep or something. And I remember a driver burning up down there in a
That
milk
was
truck.
low jack that burned up in the,
John's neighbor,
Yeah, burned
and
up in the
he only
city.
had to make it, he'd taken a load of milk to New York, and he fell asleep. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and just starting down the Cemetery Hill there, he ran into a maple tree, and it was pinned right in there. He
Yeah.
burned to death right in the truck.
what?
I remember I went down with my father, he was in the fire department, and I was like in the 7th grade, but I remember it so well.
Because it was the fire department that would be called whenever there were any accidents like that.
But-
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
we
rescue.
didn't have the rescue with the fire department then, the
Right.
ambulance, but
Sure.
This whole area, when my father came here, there wasn't even enough, a tree to make a fence post out of, he said. It was bare. Every piece of land was farmed. They had oxen and stuff, and because they all raised food to ship to New York. But now we're sort of coming back. We got a lot of woods now and everything else. Yeah.
So the trains used to run, you said, John, twice a day,
Well, they
is
had
what
two
you
trains.
remember, and then they
had
cut
two
it down?
trains- They had two trains going the same direction, instead of one track. And then they had two trains coming back. That was up to about the 1929. And then after that, when they lost to the cars and trucks and the shipping, then they had one. But they had an express on Sunday for the horse guys. Actually, they had a tourist, this was really a tourist area. In fact, on our farm, we would take in maybe 25, 30 tours. It was all over, every farmer did this. And because we had to sleep in a hay barn, because we couldn't, there was no room in the house, because I enjoyed it.
borders they
Yeah,
call
the
them.
boarders
Uh-huh.
all came up from the city, and they all came on the Huckleberry and the New York Central, and then we had to pick them up. And actually, even though it was depression at times, I just remember it with fond memories of it. You know, we had a good time.
So they would go on the express to
Yeah.
Hartford for
Oh,
the
yeah,
horse
to see the
races?
races.
Is that
Yeah.
on the
And
Hucklebush?
also, they would come up from New York. Huckleberry must have took it in New York. Because they would come up from New York to go to the Rhinebeck Fair, not the county fair, the Rhinebeck Fair, which was before the Dutchess County Fair.
Oh, yeah?
And they came up, when they had the fair here, many people would come up to the fair. And there were some other events they came up for too, I don't remember what it was, but they had special trains go down. But it was quite an experience going on to Hartford on the races. A lot of people went to it. They came up from New York City, got off the New York Central, got on the Huckleberry, headed over to Hartford. That whole day trip back and forth. I mean, that train went over all the mountains and hills. They had a spur go to Pine Plains. Pine Plains at one time had 5 railroads through it. Anchorage had 5 railroads through it at one time. That was the main, main transportation.
Chatham was a big rail center.
Chatham was another one. They had like probably 5 in there. Yeah, and they picked up farm products and left coal and took the tourists up this way. Some of those people that were way back then, still, some of their family come up and still visit us. They can remember the time when they were kids coming to the farm, and they were lifelong friends.
What was it like on the train itself, riding as a passenger? Do you remember that when you went to Hartford?
Most of the time we spent looking out the window and the scenery, you know, was just beautiful going through the Berkshires, out through you went 5 or 6 miles along the road, Jan, and you had the stream on one side. And Mount Ross was quite a hub then. I don't understand how we got to Mount Ross, but I know one thing went up, it must have went from Mount Ross to spurred off. It must have spurred up towards Chatham. Because we went across through, not through Pine Plains, but that was a spur.
Through Jackson Corners?
Yeah, right through Jackson Corners. And headed out across the mountains into Connecticut Valley. And it was fun on it. It didn't travel very fast, but that was express too.
Did we touch on the turntable? Did John?
You haven't yet.
Yeah,
What was the turntable?
Well, it was down where I'd kind of forgotten the exact location. You say it's where our water plant is now?
It's about there, yeah.
About where our water treatment plant is? Down off Slate Dock Road there. And obviously, they had to have a turntable that was the western terminal of the
railroad.
Yeah, of the railroad. And so they had to turn the locomotives around to do the return trip, and they had a turntable there.
That Slate Dock, well, it has some connection with the Huckleberry, but that was a real hub of the industry. Everything was sent, a lot of it was sent on barge, and I can remember the barge's name was the Enterprise. It's like our spaceship. It was a steam barge run by coal, and it was a big barge, and they were loaded up with all kinds of stuff, from hay to horses to produce to slate, from the slate mines around here, and every day. Elmer Harrington was telling me about how every kid in Rankin went there.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a lot of fun watching them load, a lot of activity. They had that loading dock going out. Yeah, but the coal that came across, and that's a whole other story, the Delaware Canal, and came down the roundabout and then came over to the Slate Dock, loaded on the Huckleberry, went all over the country. That was the main reason of it.
They just went down to the water treatment plant yesterday.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Oh, Roberta mentioned that.
Yeah.
You probably can see the remains of the old piers that went out in the water where the freight dock, this big barge would come in, they would load it off those docks. Yeah.
What else do you guys have?
Which one?
Why don't you try 16 and see if...
Did it, like ever break down while it was like bringing any coal or passengers, did it ever break down when it, like when in the middle of bringing like coal to its destination?
Can you repeat what he said?
Did the train ever break
They ever
down?
have,
Oh, I really don't remember that.
they never seem to have any
They had a
breakdown.
big
Save it with the old steam locomotives.
They had one big locomotive. Remember that big one they had? They came in with? Boy, oh boy. I forget the name of it. There was a number, like 538 was called.
Oh, yeah?
Big coal-fired diesel that ran a lot of freight over.
I read one article in my research that they had a winter like we just had, and the tracks got blocked by snow, and the engines couldn't get through, and the violet greenhouses almost lost all the violets because they had no coal to run the boilers to keep keep the violets from freezing.
They had a lot of hard time, different things like that.
So snow, I know, blocked the tracks from time to time.
That industry was really amazing, the violet industry.
Did you have to pay to go on it? Or to send like food on it?
Say it louder, Sandra.
Did you have to like pay to go on it or send like food or flowers on it?
Oh, sure. They can have freight, yeah. But don't ask me how much it cost it. Yeah, sure. That was a freight station. I can always remember picking the feed up there and taking the flowers down there.
What were your thoughts when you saw the train tracks being removed in, was it 1938, 1939, whatever the year was?
39.
1939.
Yeah.
38?
And then they realized what was happening, they taken it all up so fast. I didn't know it was going to Japan, I found out later it all went to Japan. And building their armaments. But that's still a trail, I guess they're trying to make a trail out of some of it, some place of it. It went through the Astor estate, and the Astor got a lot of goodies out of it, as I remember. He got a special siding to bring his own railroad car up.
Oh, yeah.
And everything else like that.
Yeah.
So he worked a good deal with it.
Well, FDR had his own railroad too, didn't he?
Was that?
Didn't FDR have his own railroad that went up and down back there, or am I recalling that incorrectly?
Gee, I don't, not that I,
Vanderbilt, I think.
Was it Vanderbilt?
I think Vanderbilt had his own train, because he ran the railroads.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
Well, I know Jen Rett had a special siding up there, you know where he is, where Gore Wydell lived in Berrytown. He lives right on there.
No, I just read that as part of the permission for crossing Astor property.
Yeah.
And Astor something still owns thousands of acres around
Yes.
Rhinebeck.
Yes.
It's still owned by the Astor family. He got a station built, so,
Right.
on his property.
Right.
So he could,
Yeah.
then he died on the Titanic.
yeah, John Jacob,
Yeah,
yes.
he got a lot of perks to let it go through.
He was instrumental in, well, he was involved on the committee when our church, the Church of the Messiah was built. That was 1897, I guess, John Jacob Astor. And of course, he went, 1912, he went down in 1910.
All right, these guys, I think, have to get on the bus in about 2 minutes, right?
I'm getting picked up.
You're not taking the bus either?
No bus. They
Oh,
had
you have no
special
bus?
Friends Day today.
He's gonna go.
Oh.
Chancellor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, do you guys have more questions?
Did the train run year round or was it closed during the winter or any other season?
I don't know what he means by that.
Did it run year-round, John?
Year-round, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they'll step in the snow. Sometimes they close up because they didn't have the big snow pushers in those days.
So how would they clear the snow off the track? Would they have some kind of something they would put on the
Yeah,
front of the
well,
train?
more or less, they didn't have too much. They had deep snow, they had trouble. They just couldn't do it.
Well, they had on the old locomotives what they call cow catcher, didn't they?
Yeah.
It was- I guess it attached to that somehow, whatever the
Yeah.
blade or something.
Sort of, you know, those were tough times, but they were times that you can remember with pride. Everybody's working together and everybody got something done. We didn't need cars, we didn't have airplanes. Yeah.
John, there's that photograph that you showed us
Yeah.
earlier that is of your
This is-
mother.
this is
It
a-
was your wife
this is my
standing
wife
on
with-
when she was a child
Was
in 19...
this is 1928, and if anybody wants this for your thing, you can have it.
Well,
You
it would
have
be
that?
great. I'm sure the students can use that.
Oh, yeah.
Did she talk about her memories of the railroad at all?
Yeah, well, she was probably on it maybe more than I was.
Uh-huh.
She was a townie like Vern. Yeah.
So what
And
did...
her father was a homesteader. That's a whole other story. After the war, the Army gave him 160 acres out there in North Dakota or someplace. He went out there and homesteaded, and that's a whole other story.
He was First World War.
Yeah.
Dutch Euler, he worked, C. Stanley Euler,
Yeah.
Dutch was his nickname. Then he was, partsman and so on, the old Rhinebeck Chevrolet
He
garage
worked
for
for
a
the
lot of
Haskins
years.
grocery store. He worked for the Railroad Express after the Huckleberry gave up, because he was a station master. And he moved over there.
Very active in the Legion always.
Very, a good ball player too.
Yep.
We just talked about the Homestead Act and moving out west, so we're connecting history to...
I have pictures, and I don't know if I can come up with it, of him in his little cabin out there that they gave him. One of the little shack was maybe a third as big as this room. That's what he lived in out there on the prairies without even a tree around. He didn't last long out there because they just were too tough.
It was, you had the last 5 years, right? In
Yeah.
order to keep it, so he wasn't able to.
I think he lasted about 3 years.
And most people did, not many people were able to live out.
But that's where he met his wife in Montana, and then they came back here and worked around here. But after the war, they were homesteading all over the place then.
The Civil War you're talking about?
No, this is World War I.
First of all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
they were still homesteading.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know they was, can't stay that long.
History is, yeah, there was a lot of open land yet.
Wow.
When Teddy Roosevelt was around, the end of 1898 and stuff, I read a story on Teddy. He was still hunting Indians. He actually shot some Indians.
Oh, wow.
That seems unreal. 1898 before he became president.
And she,
Oh, God.
Wow.
John, you're in the family is in the flower business, or was in the flower business for many years.
Right.
How did they come to be in that industry?
Well, Ben Trimpen started that business there back around early 1900s. And then Lee Saltzman had it for 20 years. We're there 40 years now. I bought from Lee Saltzman. But I always raised flowers, and I always propagated plants, and just something I loved. So now my 2 daughters are there. They're running it. But I still go up to the greenhouse, and I graft tomato plants and hybridized plants and stuff like that, yeah. It's just of interest.
And Vern, I know that you and your brother Peter are in the plumbing business for many years.
Grew up with
your father was that your father, C.E. Sipperley?
my grandfather.
Your grandfather.
And he and my grandmother had 3 sons and 4 daughters. The 3 sons followed suit with the business. And my older uncle died, older uncle, he had 2 uncles.
You got a bunch to
In
catch.
43 during the war, and he was only 44. And then my dad died in 48. I had just graduated from high school, and Peter was only in the 8th grade. And our father, they all heart problems, all coronary. And my father went at age 45. I say Peter was only in the 8th grade. But we had my uncle and I carried on the business.
How come you
My
could
younger uncle.
were interested in the huckleberry? That was part of you were studying it?
Well, we originally had thought about, there's a state archives project, and we had originally talked about what we can do and what's interesting, and Mike and David actually talked to me about, we talked about a couple things, but when I presented it to the students, they thought that, you know, they never heard, and I had never heard of a railroad aside from the Rhinecliff one, you know, running through, and they found it really, really interesting. So Dave and Mike provided us with a bunch of primary sources and articles and things like that, and we've been researching. And now we're at the point kind of where they've learned a lot, and now we're sort of, you guys are our first official filming, so we're going to create like a documentary to the best of our ability on the Rhinebeck, Connecticut.
If you go up Route 9G, and before you get to the bridge, there's a railroad, little buildings you can go in. And that guy really knows his railroads. Old timer.
Where?
It's right along the road.
Like going towards Poets Walk?
Well, you're pretty close to Atlanta.
Oh, okay, so up on, all right.
Yeah. And he's only there like on weekends, he comes out in that building, but he's got pictures and history of railroads of all over the whole Dutchess County and Columbia County.
Really?
Yeah.
I know there was one down in Hyde Park there, a little bit south of FDR's estate, down right on the Hudson. It's a playground now.
It's in the old train station.
Yeah, it was the old, I don't know, is it
It's the Hyde
still?
Park Model Railroad
Is it still
Society.
open?
I think the Model Railroad have model trains in there, and they work in there.
But it's not open to the public, is it?
I don't know, you could contact them, you could, I mean, it's I don't think, it's a private or anything, it's the
No.
Hyde Park Model Railroad Club.
Okay. Because it used to be a museum, didn't it? Or like a mini museum? It was
I think
open
it
all
sort
the
of
time.
is, like, I mean, you could find them on the web and contact them and see if they want to, make a field trip and talk about railroads.
That might be
I'm
it.
sure there's a lot of guys down there that know about the railroads.
Yeah, yeah.
But he will tell you about all the different centers, like in Ancrum with 5 trains coming together and Pine Plains. And, he has all that kind of information.
So it sounds like it's almost like planes are now, in that there's got to be a lot of like, really specific timing as far as trains coming in and trains going out, and making sure.
Oh, yeah. But the Huckleberry more or less ran in one direction.
There was one track,
Right, you said it was.
so you had to go to Connecticut and come back.
Two in one
Yeah.
direction.
And then two back.
Then 2 back. And then after the 29, it was only 1 and 1.
So there must have been some kind of offshoot where a train could pass at some point.
They only had it going in one direction.
So you would have to wait for that second train to get in before the next one boards then?
Before he came the other direction.
I see.
That's why there was only 2 trains a day.
Right. Both trains went in the same
Took
direction.
3 hours to get to Connecticut, you had to turn it around and then send the same train back.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Only one
They
track.
didn't have to worry about putting it on the side. No head-on collisions.
When you look at, what I sort of came to a summary of this whole thing is, it's about technology and how rapidly, when one thinks that it was only in June 2007 that the iPhone was invented and how that's changed our lives, how rapidly technology affects us. They had, until the 1800s, they had horses and wagons. You couldn't have had the violet business. The flowers would have died in a day it would take you to, by horseback to get, go down there. And then technology came along. Railroads could deliver flowers in 2 or 3 hours to the city, could move food, milk, perishable things to the city. And then about 30 years later, Henry Ford invented the Model T Ford. Cars came, followed by trucks. All of a sudden, you could deliver the same thing door to door. Refrigerated trucks could carry perishable things. And technology, again, went from the horses to the trains to trucks and cars, and just, you have to keep up with technology. It changes rapidly. Businesses come and go.
I can remember when we used to have ice peddlers around town, and they used to come out of the country, and you buy a chunk of ice for the day to keep your stuff cool. And you probably remember when Culver and
Duke Culver,
Duke
sure.
Culver had ice.
And the kids would follow him in the summer, Duke, can we have a piece of ice? And yeah, he'd chip you off a piece.
There wasn't any refrigerators. They started out.
Yeah, a lot of houses had an ice house
Ice box.
where they
Or
could
an
store it,
icebox.
or an ice box inside the house. Right.
Yeah, there was
Yep.
many changes, just in one lifetime, just in one lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandra, you look like you have another question brewing.
Go ahead.
Do you have
What do you
another
got?
Do you
question?
ever get any like plumbing parts from it, or no?
Any,
Like plumbing parts?
Did you ever get any
Plumbing.
plumbing parts on the Hucklebush?
not to my knowledge, of course, I was pretty young then, but I don't think we probably did. Of course, when I can first remember, we dealt with our main supply house was Interstate Plumbing in Poughkeepsie, and the New Haven Hartford Railroad they were on Smith Street, and the New Haven Railroad line went right through there. Well, that's where we bought all our supplies, or my father, those before me. And so a lot of that came by rail because they had a siding right there for Interstate Plumbing supply.
That was another thing to put the Huckleberry out, was when they put the Poughkeepsie Railroad in. Now they can bring the coal right from the mines, right on trail, right into where they want to take it, instead of going on a barge, coming up this way. And that would have a big effect on the Huckleberry.
Yeah, the walkway over the Hudson, which was a bridge,
Yeah.
a train bridge, which was built in like the 1880s,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
began to kill the Huckleberry right away because you didn't have to barge. You had to offload it in Kingston, bring the barges of the coal across the river, then reload it onto trains. Now you could run the train straight across the river at Poughkeepsie and head north from there. So that sort of killed a lot of the river traffic around the Rhine
Yeah,
Cliff
that
docks.
was built, the railroad bridge, the latter 1800?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably what killed the Delaware Canal.
The Ringling Brothers Circus used to come to Poughkeepsie, not every year, but every few years or something, generally in June. And the whole circus would come across the railroad bridge there. The whole Ringling Brothers Circus would be
Elephants on the
a
bridge.
whole train,
We tell them about the
all
elephants.
the animals and everything. What's that?
I'm telling about the elephants.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have to tell you this story, because when I was in the 5th grade, of course, John was ahead of me in school.
Smarter.
Smarter, yeah. I was in the 5th grade, that would have been, we had a circus in the old Bulkley School, which was a high school then. In the auditorium, we had an indoor circus come the first week in March, 1941, before the Second World War. We got in 41. And they kept it was like 2 performances, one in the afternoon, one in the evening. And all the school kids, of course, we had the country schools going then, the rural schools, and they all came in to see this. They had one ring out in the center of the auditorium, and they had aerial performers and all that, and they had one elephant and one camel, and they kept them temporarily, like a couple nights or something, over in Dasa Haynes' barn, you know.
Over on Market Street.
On East Market Street. And we had a snowstorm the day the circus was on, a late storm, first week in March it was. And they led the elephant and the camel over in the snowstorm, took them in the side door of the old auditorium there. It was quite a thing. Probably the only time there was ever an indoor circus there, I imagine.
And that's in the old Bulkley building right across from the church over there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Belongs to the
What's now
Catholic-
the Brogan Center.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have circuses coming anymore for the kids?
They
You
do,
kids have enjoyed
they
that
actually perform
circus?
their own circus.
Oh,
We
okay.
have performers come
Yeah,
in
the Brogan
and
Center there.
they train the students how to perform in the 6th grade, and the students perform a circus themselves.
My first 8 years of school was in a one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah, John attended the old white schoolhouse. It's still there, converted to a house. Right on Slate Quarry
Yeah, the
Road.
corner right
on the
there.
corner there.
The oldest boy was the janitor, and I was the oldest boy the last 2 years. I had to get there ahead of time, start the fires, watch the blackboard, bring the water in, put the flag up, bring the coal and shake it down. I got paid the whole $35 a year. 35 bucks a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, which building when you went to elementary school,
Well,
Vernon?
they were all burnt, that was burnt down already.
Well, I was in the third, you know what I should have brought along, which I had home? A photo of the old grade school after the fire, when the walls were still standing and so on. And that went right out to East Market Street. And what a lot of people don't realize today, the present day building,
The Brogan Center.
the Brogan Center, was built onto the old grade school, with the exception of that concrete block portion, which was built on after the school fire for more classroom space. But we had 1st and 2nd grade in the Methodist chapel over there, 7th and 8th grade in the old Catholic chapel. Of course, those days there was only one division of every grade, and like 30 pupils in the class or something. And Joe and Otto Ruge, Lou's father and uncle, they built the original garage in 38. A lot of things seem to happen in 38 and 9 in Rhinebeck. They built the front part of the present-day garage, Lou Ruge's garage there, just the front portion, in front of what was called the Old Dutchess Inn. It was a big frame building, and they eventually planned to tear it down, but they built the original garage right in front of it. Well, right after that was this grade school fire, so they rented that to the school for 12, 13 years. Now we had 4th, 5th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grades, those 4 grades there.
At Ruby's.
At Ruby's, yeah. Finished the 3rd grade there and did 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Well, we got a little off the Huckleberry, but we'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a little.
Do you have more questions? Oh, we answered all your questions.
This young man has 20 questions.
20 questions?
Yeah.
He's asked you a few of them.
Did we answer any of them to your satisfaction, or you wanna, one of them there?
Any that they didn't answer yet, Cam? What do you think?
Well, most of them are like on the train, and they said they didn't really ride the train often.
Okay.
So
You were about 7 years old when it closed, I was 12 years old. That's when the 38 was closed off.
Yeah, I was between, going on 8, I guess.
Oh, okay, excuse me.
All right, well, if you don't have any more, I can stop the recording then. That was
Okay.
good.
The only other thing I was gonna mention in regard to the old Huckleberry, they had a water standpipe up at the Hog Bridge near the station. It was on the right-hand side going down. They had a water, where they could fill the locomotives with water. They had it for the steam boilers. They had a water fill right there.
And they would wash the hogs before they shipped to New York, and that's why it's called Hog Bridge. They had it over there in the river, in the stream there, and they would.
Oh, did in the stream there?
Yeah, they washed it. Yeah. Hog Bridge.
That's good. Thank you so much. This is really cool.
Thank you both.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I'd
Enjoyed
be
doing
interested in getting, did we actually get the names of our students on the record here?
I don't think we did when we went in the beginning, no. But I will definitely put it in when we do the documentary and all that kind
Okay.
of stuff. And you're welcome to.
Can I get a photo of you guys next to Vernon and John? All 4 of you, because I know you have another student over there. Can you join
You
me?
okay, Maggie, to do that?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right.
Okay, did you?
Great.
Okay.
All right.